Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, and in this video I'm going to be going over some tips for North America in GeoGuessr. So there's not a lot of countries that have official Street View coverage in North America, but I'm going to be going over every single one that does, minus some of the trucker ones like Costa Rica, and then I'm also going to be going over some overseas territories like Bermuda or Greenland, for example. I'll go over a couple more. And I won't really get into depth on how to region guess these countries. It'll more just be identification. So let's go right into it. Now, starting off in the north with a country that isn't even a country, we have Greenland. Now, just from the landscape, Greenland is quite easy to identify. It's quite rocky, and pretty much all the time you'll have snow and ice. And also, these colored houses are quite common in Greenland as well as northern Canada. But an interesting thing about Greenland is that a lot of the different towns and communities in Greenland will have their own unique coverage, and it can get very unique, for example, with this one. I actually made a whole video going over pretty much every single meta in Greenland. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever made, so you can check it out right here. But it'll range from everything like this to just trucker coverage. There won't be a ton of normal car coverage except for in Nuuk, the capital, and that has its own meta as well. But other than that, Greenland is pretty easy to identify. There's not a whole lot to really go over, but there's a lot to go over in Canada. So if you're newer to the game or you're not a Canadian, Canada and the US can be quite difficult to tell apart sometimes. One of the best ways to tell the two countries apart is the measurement system. So here in Canada, we use the metric system. So kilometers, kilograms, liters, all that, like everyone else. And the US uses the imperial system, which only 3 countries use, and the US is the only one that uses it and has official Street View coverage. And I've talked about this on the channel quite a lot, but in a lot of residential streets in Canada, you'll just have a single yellow road line dividing the road. There's also a lot of Canadian stores, restaurants, and companies to look out for. One of the most common is Petro-Canada, the gas station. And interestingly enough, Canadian McDonald's will have this maple leaf in the center of the McDonald's logo. Now, Canada has 2 official languages, English and French is mostly spoken in Quebec. And this is Quebec right here. We have French on the stop signs, French on the signs, and these French stop signs are actually exclusive to Quebec. But Quebec isn't the only province that has French speakers. Quite a lot of provinces on the east side of Canada will have some French signs, bilingual signs. So, for example, New Brunswick has a large French-speaking minority, so you'll often have bilingual or French signs like this, as well as Ottawa will have a lot of bilingual signs as well. Now, moving on to the USA. Of course, like I was saying earlier, the USA uses the imperial system, so that's going to be miles, feet, couple others that I don't know. Pounds, I guess. But yeah, we have miles right here because we're in the US. Also, like I was saying with Canadian road lines, a lot of residential streets in the US will have double yellow road lines. I've said that a lot on the channel, especially lately. Another way to tell the US apart, especially from Canada, is the landscape. And around 40% of the US is desert, I believe. Of course, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but there is some deserts in Canada, especially in like the interior BC, but like it's not desert like this. Like it's not nearly as flat or as sandy as this. This is in Nevada. And if you see a desert, if you come across a desert like this, it's probably going to be the USA. I mean, North Mexico as well, but there's ways to tell those two apart. Now, speaking of Mexico, Mexico is an incredibly easy country to identify. For one, you'll have these octagonal poles, and these can sometimes be found in Colombia, but they're literally everywhere in Mexico. Mexico is also the only country that speaks Spanish in North America that doesn't have a car meta, as well as it's the only Spanish-speaking country in North America with Gen 4 coverage. And quite often in Mexico City, you'll find these taxis that are pink and white, and these are pretty much only found in Mexico City. Now, moving on to a country that borders Mexico, just to the south, we have Guatemala. Guatemala is incredibly easy to identify. All you need to really know is this Google car meta. Now, when I was new to GeoGuessr, I often found it difficult to tell the difference between the Guatemala meta and the Dominican Republic meta. But in the Dominican Republic, these roof racks will have this black strip that goes through the center of them. Guatemala won't have this, and you can't really see like any other parts like the mirrors or the sides of the car. In the Dominican Republic, it's just these roof racks, unlike Guatemala, where you'll be able to see other parts of the car. And again, this is pretty much all you really need to know to identify the Dominican Republic. Now, just going a bit east, we have Puerto Rico, and well, technically it's part of the US, it's pretty much its own thing. And Puerto Rico is pretty easy to identify. Of course, there's Spanish there, there's lots of Spanish on the signs, and you have kind of this Caribbean, very warm climate. But what stands out is that there aren't front license plates, which compared to every other Caribbean island in GeoGuessr, this is unique to Puerto Rico. The US has a couple of territories in the Caribbean, and another one of these is the US Virgin Islands. Now, I actually made a whole video going over a ton of different islands and their metas, including some of the ones I'll go over in this video, but it's a lot more in depth, so if you want to check it out, you can check it out right here. But the US Virgin Islands, you'll find this meta, and this kind of last part will be a bit of a speed run as well. So yeah, this is the US Virgin Islands. This card can be found in Bermuda, and this card can be found in the Dutch overseas territory of Curacao. And that pretty much covers everything I wanted to talk about in this video. So if you enjoyed, leave a like. If you're new to the channel and enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel a lot. And I'll see you in the next one.